C'est avec un immense plaisir que nous recevons le professeur Terry Collins, qui enseigne à la Carnegie Mellon Faculty de Pittsburgh depuis 1987. Il a publié de nombreux documents relatifs au développement de la chimie verte et sur la question du développement durable. On le reçoit avec donc beaucoup de plaisir. Professeur Collins, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Nous allons bavarder, discuter pendant un moment de toutes ces problématiques qui sont déterminantes pour le futur, nos futures générations, en abordant deux thèmes. Le premier de ces thèmes va être celui de la durabilité liée au développement durable. C'est une question clé sur laquelle vous travaillez depuis longtemps.
Universities worldwide are in a civilization that we know is not sustainable. And we know this from copious scientific evidence, so that we are changing the climate. We are heating, filling, killing, acidifying the oceans. We are changing the hydrological cycle. We have the low dose effects of everyday chemicals, where traces of chemicals can alter the way cells would normally develop. There are too many of us, way too many of us, and on one can go, with a whole set of issues that really threaten the future for our children and grandchildren. The universities really haven't engaged with these problems. These problems have been developing over the last 5 or 6 decades. We've got mountains of science that have been developing during that time, but these are confrontational issues, and the universities have, by and large, there are of course always exceptions, particularly with individuals, but the universities by and large have not engaged in a major way with these problems.
Pourquoi elle ne s'est pas engagée plutôt, l'université?
So it's a very hard question to answer simply because it's simple to answer. It's because universities are so dependent on the system and so dependent on a large cash flow from the system to function. And unfortunately, many of the technologies that are causing the problems hold most of the cash. So that if you begin sort of rattling sabers at these various technologies, you run the risk of having your university not have the kind of resources it needs to operate. So we, rather than being the leaders that we should be, because in American universities, I have tenure. People cannot fire me for saying what I believe is true after doing my studies, and it's a very rare and precious position that we have. So universities have avoided these issues. We can't keep doing this. We train this is a leadership crisis. We train the leaders of the civilization.
Et vous pensez qu'aujourd'hui, les choses changent, commencent à changer à l'université?
So when I look at these really wonderful young people that come to Carnegie Mellon University, they're brilliant. And I look at the training that they're going to get, for example, in science. We're going to teach them superbly in science. But unless we change a lot, we're not going to teach them about the consequences of the operation of the skills that we're going to give them. We're going to train them to make new compositions of matter, and they're going to go out into companies where, at least in the past, and it is beginning to change a little bit, if these new creations of themselves can make money and have high technical performance, they're very likely going to be commercialized. The actual impact on health and the environment is very weakly, if at all, studied. So how do we change? We have to change in all sorts of ways. Universities take in students and specialize them and hyper-specialize them. Okay, so if you come into a university and just learn about chemistry or just learn about a branch of chemistry and not about the impacts of the works of that field on the environment, you're inadequately trained to be a leader in sustainability. Leaders of sustainability will understand the sustainability crises. Most importantly, they will understand how to avoid them directionally. None of us knows what a sustainable civilization will look like. What we can know from science in real time is how to choose between going towards a technology that takes us on the unsustainable route or towards a technology that takes us on the sustainable route. For example, in energy, if we're going to expand carbon technologies, we're not going to have a good future. If we're going to expand renewable technologies, we have every chance of having a great future. And so these are choices that students are equipped to make and equipped to be leaders of the future if they understand the basic science and all of the implications. We must also teach these things when we're teaching them to be good technocrats.
Est-ce que d'une certaine manière, ça ne veut pas dire qu'il faut aujourd'hui construire une nouvelle économie globale?
It is about producing a new economy. It is totally about producing a new economy. This is not a protest movement. Green chemistry is not a protest movement. It is about deeply understanding the needs of nature, listening to nature, learning from the science about nature, and adapting technologies so that they are compatible with nature to the best of our abilities. We will make mistakes because we don't understand everything, but at least we will not continue to pursue technologies that we already know based on the science are disastrous with respect to sustainability. So then the question becomes,
est-ce qu'il n'y a pas aussi un manque de communication, par exemple, entre les chimistes, les physiciens, les biologistes, les économistes? Chacun travaille un peu dans son camp sans tenir compte de manière horizontale des autres.
Training people to be leaders of sustainability is not for the faint of heart. It is not easy, it's extremely hard. So first of all, to be an outstanding scientist, you have to be a great technocrat. You have to go down deep inside chemistry and learn something very, very profound about the science. This is what we do, and we do very well. But in the process of doing that, you must also communicate with the other sciences, and particularly with the other fields, with ethics, with
en français, interdépendance. Dépendance.
Oh, interdependence. Oh, yes, interdependence. So we know a great deal about it, often a very important but a small thing. When we need to know that, but we need to know a great deal about the implications of practicing the skills that we get down these drill holes.
Question importante dans ce contexte, le rôle des politiques, des hommes politiques que l'on va retrouver au gouvernement et qui seront appelés à prendre des décisions.
Okay, so the role of the university is to train leaders. That's what we do. Looking at the environmental problems that we have, we have a leadership crisis. So we must train our young students to be great leaders in the future. Now, when we look at the current political scene, the problem is that, well, I will just say it very bluntly. The oligarchs of the United States really determine the direction of the country with respect to technologies. And so, in fact, what we have is very rich and powerful people who are making a great deal of money from unsustainable technologies and making it very, very difficult to change directions. When you look, for example, at Europe, and if you ask yourself, are there any countries where people are doing a better job? The answer is clearly yes. Germany is doing, comparably speaking, a magnificent job. It has moved its energy basis from particularly coal to renewables. It's now about 25% renewable energy technology. It's mostly wind and solar. They have a very small hydroelectric component. The United States, over the last decades, has sat there, and people have said, we'll never be able to do that, it costs too much. All while the Germans have been doing it, being clever in inventing government programs to help the development of renewable technology. We have Denmark. Denmark, which has an enormous amount of wind energy in their electricity grid. 2 years ago, I would look at this and think there's no hope. The United States is just not going to change and is going to lead the world on the wrong trajectory I live at the epicenter in Pittsburgh of the natural gas, a major natural gas development. Another carbon technology that we're bringing up when we could be bringing up, instead be bringing up renewables. And so I sit and I look and I think, my goodness, there is really no hope. However, it's changing. Because of private enterprise, because of private individuals and a few states backing renewable energy, we have now got a major change in the energy trajectory. We are at 4% plus in wind energy now in the United States, 1% approximately in solar, and the growth curve is enormously steep. We need to keep that up. And so governments can make an enormous difference with just a little incentive. Instead of incentivizing the oil industry to do what they do, take those incentives and give it to the solar and wind, and you have a major change.
Vous pensez, quand vous regardez l'avenir, que des choses déterminantes vont se passer et sur quel terme? Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est le moyen terme? Est-ce que c'est le long terme? C'est difficile de changer les mentalités, difficile de changer les habitudes. Quelle est votre idée sur la question du terme?
Yeah, very, very important question. You see, the students of the universities are so important. They're so important because they train the leaders. So if you take young people in their 20s and put in their head a set of ideas that make them able to be leaders of the future, then you have some hope of moving, admittedly in the long term, towards a sustainable trajectory, hopefully while the incumbent generations are doing all the time better. But without very open discussion of the sustainability crises in the universities, and without a different mentality, we're not going to make it. So for example, money is so important. We all know how important money is. But money, by and large, does not integrate health and the environment into the value proposition of technologies. And the four performances that are important for sustainability are: high technical performance is important. You can't make a technology that doesn't work. High cost performance is important. If it's too expensive, people won't buy it. High environmental performance for sustainability is critical. If that technology is destroying the environment, it simply is unsustainable. High health performance is absolutely critical. We haven't figured out how to integrate health and the environment into the value proposition of new technologies. Well, of course, then you look at the university and you can say, well, chemists making technologies have to understand toxicity to be able to handle health and the environment. Almost to a university, in the United States, we don't teach these things. Our business schools have to engage. Our business schools have to, the bottom line for a business school has to include health and the environment. How do we make these changes?
Professeur, on est donc à une sorte de turning point, un point très très important. Vous avez beaucoup d'expérience, vous travaillez depuis longtemps sur ces questions. Très brièvement, est-ce que vous êtes optimiste?
So I'm optimistic that we can move the civilization directionally by training the students to think well and to engage in moving the civilization directionally. That's our job. I'm optimistic from the point of view that I myself and I have many great friends who will confront the issues. They will not stand by and let these issues go unspoken. The more we speak about them, they're completely obvious that we have sustainability crises, completely obvious that we need to talk about them. I'm seeing more and more people being courageous and talking about the things that have to be talked about, that have to be taught in order for our children and grandchildren to do a better job than we've done. So I'm optimistic at that level. But I also am deeply knowledgeable of how profound the sustainability crises are and how short the time clock is on these sustainability crises. And so really it is a race. It's a race against ourselves. It's a race to find the best in ourselves and amplify it as quickly as possible to deal with these great challenges.
Thank you, Professor.